State Labor government delivering a so-called surplus today in its latest budget. My next guest has a real warning. Michael Brennan is a former Deputy Secretary of the Victorian Treasury Department, also past Chair of the Productivity Commission, and he now heads up a leading economic think tank, E61 Institute. He joins me now. Michael, welcome. Give me your headline assessment on Labor's budget that came down today. You've called for a course correction here. $200 billion in debt, a surplus that's basically just been written off the back of farmers in this new emergency services levy. What did you make of today's numbers?
Look, I think if you rewind a few weeks, there was probably a point at which we felt that this would be a course correction, that there was going to be something different about this budget relative to what we have seen from recent budgets under Treasurer Tim Pallas. I think it's fair to say that in the end, that turned out not to be the case. This was really more of the same. It was very much a budget that Tim Pallas himself could have brought down. The real issue for the Victorian government at the moment is debt. And although there is a return to an operating surplus, which is the first in 6 years, and it does beg the question, should we really have taken 6 years to come back to surplus after the pandemic? But the big question is debt. Debt is now the equivalent of 25% of the economy. That is a larger figure than was the case in the early 1990s, at the tail end of the Kane and Kerner governments. And when debt is that high, probably the best way to judge a budget is on the cash position. Are we adding to or detracting from net debt? This budget continues to add to net debt. It adds another $8 to $10 billion per year to net debt. And I think over time, that is something that's going to continue to constrain the budget. The interest costs are now the fastest growing part of the budget. So I think this is something that's really becoming a bit of a burden for the taxpayer and for the government.
And taxes more generally are a burden. I mean, Victorians are the most taxed residents of any state in the Commonwealth. And we know there's a heavy reliance on property taxes in Victoria. It's driving investment interstate and overseas. We know that the Ponzi scheme of immigration's also been something used by the state government to prop up their numbers. It's not doing a good job if they're at $200 billion in terms of debt. But, I mean, how on earth do you make inroads in this? How do you grow the economy in Victoria?
Well, I think this is the struggle. So in many ways, the options are narrowing for the government. They didn't introduce new taxes today, although, of course, they have just legislated this rather unpopular tax, which was the subject of a protest at Parliament House today. But no new taxes in this budget. But, of course, in one sense, they've kind of maxed out the scope for new taxes. Taxes are around 6% of gross state product. They are the highest in the country. It's really not clear that there's a lot of flexibility for them to raise extra revenue. The challenge now, of course, is if you want to reduce that tax burden, there is a trade-off between doing that and getting the debt under control. That's something that's going to have to be managed over time, and there's really no quick fix.
All right, I'll leave it there. I know you've squeezed us in. You've got an engagement to go to. Thank you very much, Michael Brennan.